The topic of today's video was suggested by a viewer. Huge thanks to Revised Games for suggesting this very interesting topic. If you have any topics you want to suggest, let me know in the comment section below. Rico Harris was the oldest child of a basketball player named Henry Harris, who played as a forward for Idaho State and later met a woman named Margaret Fernandez when he played on a semi-professional team in Los Angeles. Margaret gave birth to Rico in 1977, and the couple soon moved to Oregon with Rico, where Henry had been offered a job. Most of the time, Henry was a loving husband, but on occasion he would become violent and abusive. This abuse extended to his children, especially Rico, even after the family moved back to Los Angeles and had 3 more children. Despite his rough upbringing, Rico always craved his father's love and approval, even into his adulthood, and this could very well have been one of the main reasons he excelled at basketball. However, Margaret eventually left Henry and took the children to Alhambra, California, the suburb where she had grown up herself. Without his father's influence, Rico's interest in basketball declined, and by age 15 he had stopped playing and was focused on beginning an acting career. With this in mind, Rico and a friend attended Hollywood High School, which was a long distance from the family home. Regardless of the distance between school and home, Rico was always a presence within his family, helping his siblings to persevere throughout the hardships they faced. It only took a year for Rico to lose interest in acting, and he quickly returned to the basketball court. He used his father's address in Temple City to enroll in high school there for his junior year, and he became known around the area for his skills on the court. Most people who watched him play would remark that his talents were NBA level, and he had a bright future ahead of him. Before Rico showed up, the Temple City team was average at best, but he transformed them into a force to be reckoned with, and college scouts were drawn to Temple City. Rico was a fan of the LA Lakers, and those who watched him play stated that his style emulated Magic Johnson. Off the court, Rico was a fairly shy child, and he received poor grades, but after getting a girlfriend, his social skills improved dramatically and his grades rose until he achieved a 3.0 GPA. Around this time, he averaged 28 points and 15 rebounds per game, which was during his senior year. The Long Beach Press-Telegram recognized Rico as one of the best high school players on the West Coast. The former head coach of a basketball team at UCLA, a man named Jim Herrick, had his sights set on Rico, and Jim recruited the young man shortly before leaving his position. Unfortunately, Rico's performance on the SATs was underwhelming, and his scholarship for UCLA was withdrawn. During the 1996 to 1997 academic year, Rico was the MVP of the State Community College tournament, and he even led his team to the state championship. He managed to play 1 season for a Division I college team, but for some reason he never made it past this, and despite considerable interest from numerous NBA teams, he never signed a contract. Rico ended up attending Arizona State under Proposition 48, which is an NCAA rule that requires a prospective student-athlete to take classes without competing for their freshman year, and they can only compete in their sport if their grades are up to snuff. However, Arizona State is a long ways away from Alhambra, California, and without the support of his family and friends, Rico's grades suffered as well as his social abilities. In March of 1996, Rico was arrested on a charge of unlawful imprisonment alongside 2 other student-athletes after 2 women claimed that the athletes had essayed them. Investigators eventually discovered inconsistencies between the women's stories, which prompted them to drop the charges, but Arizona State asked Rico to sit out for another year instead of competing. Exasperated with his ban from athletics, Rico returned to California and enrolled at Los Angeles City College, a 2-year junior program, with the hope of improving his academic performance to be able to play at Rhode Island, where Coach Herrick had taken up a new position. During his time at LACC, Rico played on the basketball team, where he averaged 16.5 points and 14 rebounds per game. NBA scouts frequently watched Rico's games, hoping that he would quit college and join the NBA when he was old enough to do so. That season, the LACC Cubs had a dominant winning record, only losing 6 games compared to the 30 games that they won, and they earned their first ever California Community College Athletic Association state title. Rico himself was named the championship tournament MVP. Following this success, Rico intended to go to Rhode Island and play for Coach Herrick, but he failed a psychology class after skipping too many lectures, which left him ineligible to play. Later that year, Rico visited UConn in Chicago and then returned to LACC afterwards. His experience at LACC the second time around was heavily saturated with alcohol, and Rico was known to play in basketball games with extreme hangovers. Nevertheless, he was still the best player on the team. However, his attitude took a nosedive as a result of the alcohol abuse, and the coach suspended him for disruptive behavior. Rico blamed the coach for not keeping the team in check. Rico's drinking only got worse as the season progressed, and his girlfriend broke up with him. Social isolation only caused his personal life to sour. Rico declared himself for the 1998 NBA draft, and although NBA recruiters invited him to a pre-draft camp in Chicago, he declined the offer and withdrew from the draft. In Rico's opinion, he wasn't ready to take on the challenge of the NBA with all the personal struggles he was fighting through. In September of 1998, Rico asked the basketball coach at Cal State Northridge, a man named Bobby Braswell, if he could join the team. There was a scholarship available, and Braswell gave it to Rico, who believed that Braswell's strict style of discipline was exactly what he needed to improve his personal life. Unfortunately, Rico descended into alcohol abuse once again, and Braswell suspended him. Rico also suffered an injury to his hip, which caused him to miss an additional 5 weeks of the season. Following this, Rico's performance became noticeably worse. He now averaged 10 points per game, which was the lowest he had ever achieved in his college career. Shortly before the end of the season, Braswell suspended Rico once again, this time for skipping a meeting with the coach, and that was the end of Rico's college basketball days. Rico began playing semi-professional basketball, still maintaining his hope that the NBA was interested in him. He drank much less during this time, and he eventually began a new relationship. In spring of the year 2000, Rico joined the Harlem Globetrotters, which seemed to fit his talents perfectly. However, just a month after he joined, Rico was driving around South Los Angeles with his girlfriend when he got into a dispute with some people, and after leaving his car to confront them, they hit him in the back of the head with a baseball bat. Rico fled the scene, but shortly after he started to experience intense headaches and problems with his equilibrium. At the age of 24, Rico was forced to leave the Globetrotters, and his basketball career was officially over. Rico returned to his mother's house, where he failed to find a job and soon returned to alcohol abuse. His mother told him to snap out of it, but Rico only fell deeper into the pit, experimenting with various hard drugs. Throughout the early 2000s, Rico was arrested more than 100 times, with public intoxication being his most common charge. After being released from jail, he would immediately start hitting the bottle again, and he resorted to begging in order to fund his addiction. In 2007, shortly after his 30th birthday, Rico finally had a breakthrough, although it came at a price. He overdosed on prescription medication and was brought to a rehab facility in downtown Los Angeles. Rico spent a long time in rehab, but he eventually recovered and moved in with another graduate of the program, a man named Wilfredo. Rico secured a job as a security guard, and he met a woman named Jennifer at a party. Rico and Jennifer soon became a couple, even though Jennifer lived in Seattle, and they started spending long weekends in one of their cities. By September of 2014, the couple began discussing marriage, and their conversations even included possible baby names. Unfortunately, Wilfredo resented his roommate's relationship, and there was frequent conflict in the home, and Rico eventually moved out, leaving Wilfredo with several unpaid bills. Rico moved in with Jennifer, intending to relocate permanently to Seattle. This change caused some friction within the relationship, but they worked through their problems. Rico obtained a Washington State driver's license and scheduled a job interview for our position as a property appraiser, which was significant for him because it would be the first job that required skills outside of his athletic ability. Before fully planting his roots in Seattle, Rico decided to return to Alhambra to visit his family one last time. Jennifer believes that the purpose of this meeting was for Rico to get some closure for the difficult events in his childhood. On October 9th of 2014, Rico took one of his brothers out to eat and gave him a new cell phone as a gift, then returned to his mother's house to speak with her privately. His mother does not think that Rico got what he wanted from their conversation. Shortly after midnight, Rico departed for Seattle, where his job interview was scheduled for the next day. He drove north on Interstate 5, and records showed that he stopped in Lodi, California to get gas. At 10:45 a.m. on October 10th, Rico called Jennifer and left a message, saying that he was going up into the mountains to rest because he had not slept much recently. At 11:15 a.m., Rico turned his phone off, and he has never been seen since. When Rico failed to return to Seattle, Jennifer called his mother, and they decided to wait for a little while. At one point years before, Rico had briefly disappeared in San Francisco, so they figured he would probably turn up. By October 14th, several days after Rico missed his job interview, they realized that something was seriously wrong. Rico was reported missing to the Alhambra police. That same afternoon, a Yolo County deputy sheriff was patrolling a stretch of California State Route 16 near Cache Creek when he noticed that a black Nissan Maxima had been parked in a state county lot for 2 days straight. The officer looked inside the vehicle and saw several CDs, credit cards, and an assortment of papers. The car had not been reported stolen, and it was registered to Rico Harris, so Yolo County authorities contacted the Alhambra police. Law enforcement performed a search effort of Cache Creek Canyon, assisted by all-terrain vehicles, helicopters, a plane with a thermographic camera, and search dogs. Additionally, the area surrounding the parking lot was scoured and the highway in both directions was searched. After 3 days, the search effort was called off, and people were at a loss for how it was possible for the authorities to find nothing. Rico was 6'9" and weighed 300 pounds, so it wasn't like anybody could simply not see him. Rico's description was circulated to the public, and this resulted in a possible sighting on October 11th. A passerby allegedly witnessed a man who matched Rico's description walking along Route 16 at 5:30 p.m. Another alleged witness claimed to have seen a man sitting on a guardrail and staring at the creek. The authorities towed Rico's car and examined it, determining that the battery was dead and the tank was empty. Investigators found Rico's wallet, all of his credit cards except for one, and a Discover card, but his phone and license were both missing. The vehicle also contained 2 plastic bottles, one containing hard liquor and the other smelling strongly of the same substance. On October 18th, another sighting was reported. A man who had driven past the parking lot reported seeing a large man with light-colored pants early in the morning. The next day, investigators found a trail of fresh footprints leading from the parking lot to the creek. They also discovered Rico's backpack by the side of the road, just a short distance from the spot where a witness had allegedly seen him sitting on the guardrail. In the backpack were his phone and charger, and the phone contained pictures and videos placing Rico in that general area at the time of his disappearance. On October 22nd, the sheriff's office announced that it was scaling back the search effort, and divers were brought in to search nearby sections of the creek, but nothing more was found. The lead detective on the case, Dean Nyland, believes that foul play is not involved in the case, and Rico most likely stopped in the parking lot to rest. After waking up from a nap, the unresolved issues from his past started messing with his head, and he decided not to go back to Seattle yet. He then started exploring the surrounding area, but he got lost, and after he eventually found his way back to the parking lot, he discovered that his car was missing. At that point, he began walking through the woods to the nearest town. What do you think about this theory? Do you agree that foul play was not involved, or do you think that Rico came across someone with insidious intentions? To this day, the case remains unsolved. John Brisker was born in the summer of 1947, and he grew up in Hamtramck, Michigan. He described his upbringing as tough, saying that his family moved 15 to 20 times because they could not pay rent. They lived in a housing project when he was in high school, and John always vented his frustrations by playing basketball. He was one of the stars on his high school team, and he set off for the University of Toledo in 1965. The university had a rule that freshmen could not compete on the varsity team, so John played on the freshman team, which dominated the varsity team every time they scrimmaged. In addition, John played as a tight end on the university's football team, and he also took up the tuba for the school's marching band. When John eventually made it to the varsity basketball team, he was a forward for the Toledo Rockets. He never instigated fights, but he also never backed down from one. Unfortunately, in December of 1968, John was declared academically ineligible to compete for the rest of the season, which ended his college basketball career. In 1969, the NBA team, the Philadelphia 76ers, selected John during a supplemental draft, but John chose to play for the Pittsburgh Pipers in the ABA instead. They later changed their team name to the Pittsburgh Condors. John was a machine on the court, averaging 29 points per game. Despite his skills, John was known for being a volatile presence. One of his Condors teammates, Charlie Williams, stated he was an excellent player, but say something wrong to the guy and you had the feeling he would reach into his bag, take out a gun, and shoot you. In fact, John was ejected for fighting so often that he gained the nickname the heavyweight champion of the ABA. John rationalized his propensity for fighting by claiming that he only fought people who were bigger than him. During his time in the ABA, several scandals followed John like a cloud. He made a statement that he would do anything to put his team in the playoffs, including breaking someone's leg. He was witnessed intimidating the ABA's commissioner to pay him a $300 All-Star bonus. He got into a fight with the police at Three Rivers Stadium, and he also got into a sparring match with Muhammad Ali at the Miami airport. By late 1971, John considered his time in Pittsburgh to be a hassle. In an effort to increase his pay, he refused to practice or play for the Condors near the end of one of their seasons. The Condors filed a lawsuit against him to prevent him from signing to another team. John briefly played for the Dallas Chaparrals, but the team dumped him for racial reasons. One of the owners openly stated, "Last year Dallas had only 2 white players compared to 10 black players, and we drew less than 100 fans who were colored. A bunch of people want white faces, someone they can identify with." The Seattle Supersonics did not share this racist view, and they signed John with a $1 million contract. John's 3 seasons with Seattle were disappointing compared to his previous seasons, but he averaged 12 points per game. However, John constantly butt heads with Seattle's coach, Bill Russell, and his playing time suffered because of this. The fans recognized the injustice of this, and they could often be heard chanting, "We want Brisker," during games. Off the court, John had a reputation for being good with children, and he helped to organize a charity basketball game to raise money for a youth basketball program in Pittsburgh's Hill District. He also spent hours volunteering to raise money for sickle cell anemia research. Despite this, Bill Russell was desperate to get rid of John, so he demoted John to the Cherry Hill Rookies, which was a minor league. In his first game in the minor league, John scored 51 points, which broke the league's record, and in the very next game he broke his own record when he scored 58 points. In 1977, with 3 years left on his Seattle contract, John accepted a buyout for half of what Seattle owed him. His basketball career was over, and his personal life suffered. Back in Pittsburgh, his wife filed for divorce, and John was held in contempt for failing to pay child support. In Seattle, John had another child with a different woman, and he owned several businesses that were drowning in debt. Over the course of the next year, John took numerous trips to Africa in order to pursue business opportunities. In March of 1978, he traveled to Uganda, hoping to establish an import-export business. According to his girlfriend, John called her several times while in Uganda, and she last heard from him on April 11th of 1978. This final phone call was from Kampala, Uganda, and John's brother, Ralph, believes that he may have been captured as a prisoner of war. Other people have speculated that John may have crossed paths with the Ugandan dictator Idi Amin. Yet more people have suggested that John might have been killed while fighting as a mercenary or bodyguard for Amin. After Amin was ousted from power, records were found that indicated the paranoid dictator was being fed information that would have made John a likely target of his violence. Around the time of John's visit, Amin received a letter from a British soldier he was close to that read, "Your Excellency, we have evidence through documentation and interrogation that foreign companies are working against the Ugandan economy. We also have evidence that the CIA is working against you. We would like to give our intelligence verbally. Your obedient servant, Bob Astles." Being a United States businessman, John was very likely targeted by the regime. Some people speculated that John might have gone missing of his own volition in order to escape his debt and obligations in the United States, but this hypothesis has essentially been scrapped. John still had numerous friends and family members in the States, none of whom have heard from him since. The State Department does not have any direct record of John entering Uganda, but their records do include the following information that was given to them by an anonymous source. Benjamin Lewis Taylor visited Uganda in the spring of 1977 and approached Amin with a deal to bring a Black American business group to the country. Brisker joined Taylor. Subsequently, the two were accused of criminal activities, abducted from their rooms at the Kampala International Hotel, sent to the State Research Bureau, and never seen again. However, in April of 1979, Amin was forced out of the country, and shortly thereafter, people witnessed smoke rising from the incinerator at the State Research Bureau, most likely indicating that his regime burned any evidence of their wrongdoings. As a result, John Brisker's fate will probably remain a mystery forever, although it's not difficult to imagine what likely happened to him. Click the join button to become a member today. Channel members receive exclusive content as well as early access to all my content. Bison Dele was born on April 6 of 1969 in Fresno, California, the second son of Patricia Phillips and singer Eugene Williams Jr. Bison's birth name was Brian Williams. Patricia eventually remarried and raised her children in Fresno until her second marriage fell apart when Brian was in junior high. As a junior in high school, Brian played for the basketball team at Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas, where he averaged 17 points and 12 rebounds per game. For his senior year, he switched to St. Monica Catholic High School in Santa Monica, California. He was originally a track and field runner until a sudden growth spurt pushed him into basketball. Brian started his college basketball career at the University of Maryland, then transferred to the University of Arizona. After playing 2 seasons in Arizona, he was drafted with the 10th pick in the first round of the 1991 NBA draft by the Orlando Magic. Brian did not get much playtime during his first 2 seasons in Orlando. Following this, Brian switched to the Denver Nuggets, where he played 2 more seasons. In 1993 and 1994, he played 80 games and averaged 8 points per game. Brian then played 1 year for the Los Angeles Clippers, where he averaged nearly 16 points per game. However, due to a contract dispute, Brian had difficulty finding a team at the beginning of the 1996-97 season, and he sat out for most of that season. He was then signed by the Chicago Bulls shortly before the end of the season, and he became an important backup player for them. Brian finished his career with 2 seasons for the Detroit Pistons, where he averaged 16 points and almost 9 rebounds per game. In 1998, Brian legally changed his name to Bison Dele in honor of his Native American and African heritage. Just before the start of the 1999-2000 basketball season, Bison retired at age 30. He had been the Pistons' highest-paid player, but his relationship with the organization had become strained, and he decided to walk away rather than get traded. Some people have also speculated that he was not actually passionate about basketball, and he decided that he had made enough money to justify retirement. Off the court, Bison enjoyed music and travel. He played the saxophone, violin, and trumpet, and he earned his pilot's license. It was rumored that he dated Madonna at one point during his career. After retiring, Bison spent long periods of time traveling to Lebanon, the Mediterranean, and the Australian outback. He also learned how to sail, and he purchased a catamaran. On July 6th of 2002, Bison set sail from Tahiti on his catamaran, joined by his girlfriend Serena, his brother Miles, and his skipper Bertrand. However, at some point during the voyage, things went horribly wrong, and on July 20th, Miles brought the catamaran back into Tahiti without his fellow crew members. On September 6th of 2002, the police used a sting operation to detain Miles in Phoenix. They learned that Miles had forged Bison's signature in order to open mailboxes in his name, as well as to buy $152,000 worth of gold, using Bison's passport as identification. The catamaran was found off the coast of Tahiti with the nameplate removed and several possible bullet holes riddled throughout. Around this same time, Miles called Patricia, he and Bison's mother, and told her that he would never hurt Bison and that he himself could not survive in prison. The FBI and French law enforcement became involved in the case, and they found that Miles had purchased roughly $200 worth of weights. They suspected that he planned to use them to weigh down the bodies of his brother and fellow crew members. Law enforcement concluded that Miles had murdered Bison and the other 2 crew members, but given the fact that he had most likely disposed of their bodies in the Pacific Ocean, they would probably never be found. Miles intentionally overdosed on insulin and slipped into a coma, and he passed away on September 27th of 2002. Shortly before his death, Miles had told the authorities that he had gotten into a fight with his brother, and Serena had accidentally been hit in the head and died. Bertrand had wanted to report this, but Bison panicked and killed him. Miles then shot Bison in self-defense, threw the bodies overboard, and fled to the United States. The FBI forensic analysis of the boat did not find any evidence to support this version of events, and they concluded that Miles was probably lying. To this day, the disappearance of Bison Dele remains unsolved. With the death of Miles, the last person who had witnessed the events on the boat will almost certainly never get the full story.